Hey guys, what's up? It is week 373, and before we start, I'll let you guys know that for 1982, I was looking at my master list, and I realized that Miracle Fighters, which I covered last week, was on there. So I'm going to go ahead and add it to my 82 list. Also realized that Last Show, which I watched the movie, the kind of short by Michael J. Murphy, is an 83 movie. So I did that for no reason. Oh well, maybe I'll rewatch it for 83, maybe not. I don't think it's going to make my list, but I probably will rewatch it just because I'm crazy like that. We'll hop into the reviews. There's a bunch of them, and there's some for an update as well. First one is Dark Force 4K of Mirror. Now, this was originally put out on Blu-Ray. And the Blu-ray, I think, had a handful of features on there. They didn't get any of the features ported over, but there's, I believe, a new commentary on here. Okay, so Mirror. It stars Rainbow Harvest, who's an actress who's in a handful of things, very familiar face, and she's definitely going for a Winona Ryder Beetlejuice thing. I think that would be the first thing that anyone said. Mirror is kind of like if you took Heathers, Beetlejuice, maybe a little bit of Oculus in there, and Boogeyman, and kind of threw it in there, some demonic possession, and that's kind of what you have here in Mirror. So we have this period setting right in the beginning where these two twin sisters end up killing each other, and it seems like one's possessed by this mirror. We fast forward. It's called like the Wentworth or Wentworth estate. I can't remember what the last name of these individuals is. So now we have Karen Black, whose husband just recently died, moving in with her daughter in Rainbow Harvest, and they leave the mirror. Yvonne DiCarlo runs kind of a reselling place. She's into the occult stuff, and she thinks she takes the mirror, but obviously it appears back there. What happens is strange things start happening almost immediately. Rainbow Harvest is kind of a goth girl. She's the only one in this like kind of preppy, expensive school. One of the girls does befriend her, but she's immediately a target for bullies. William Sanderson is in the film for a short period of time. He's looking to kind of date Karen Black. William Sanderson's a classic character actor in a million movies, from Hologram Man to Blade Runner. So yeah. This movie's almost an hour and 40. It's an hour and 43 minutes, which is a long runtime for this kind of film, this kind of lower budget horror film. But while I was watching it, it started to win me over. And I think I tried to watch this or saw parts of this years ago, and I never absolutely really loved it. This time around, I did really enjoy it. So, like I said, Rainbow Harvest starts to be kind of possessed by this mirror, and she gains powers. Stephen Tobolowsky's in here as a dickhead teacher. You know, he's forced an asthma attack. One of the bully girls gets a bloody nose, and it starts off, kind of like subtle enough at first, but before long, people end up dead, and the deaths are pretty solid. They're bloody. There's a lot of blood flying out the mirror. One of the tricks they used, they put cement and blood mix and had it pour out the mirror. That's pretty effective. The end scene is pretty crazy. There's a good shower death. I think the shower death's really good, and there's a great gag in here where the bully girl, she's running for student president against Rainbow Harvest's best friend, who is also running for student president. And the bully, she's always talking about her biggest assets, and she has large breasts, and the whole promo video is cut around her breast. It's actually pretty funny and silly. But, this looked really solid. I thought Mirror looked great on 4K. The sound is a little iffy. But that's not the only 80s movie I popped in and listened to the sound on 4K or Blu-ray and been like, that leaves a little bit more to be desired. And I'm going to be honest, it's probably all they could do. It sounds really good, except sometimes during a lot of the dialogue or screaming, there's some kind of an echo hissing kind of sound. That could have been done in the actual film itself before they even got the elements, which I'm sure it probably was. The Blu-ray has the same issue. I checked on a different TV and setting and different sound system, and it's all the same, this hissing, especially when the character's talking about, making his sandwich and having the crowd cheer for mayo. It's not crippling. It's not like the Body Bags audio. I remember that being really horrible from Scream Factory, but it's been years. But, I did notice a little downgrade on the audio in comparison to the video, of course. This is a fun kind of supernatural horror film. Karen Black is solid. William Sanderson's solid. Rainbow Harvest I like. Would have liked to see her in some more things. Very much Winona Ryder. It's just like, we want Beetlejuice. We want Heathers. We have Beetlejuice and Heathers at home. This is Mirror. Not as an insult, but that's just kind of what it reminds me of. As far as the special features are concerned, we have the owner of Dark Force, a couple other people that worked on the movie, and one of the guys from Beat the Geeks is on there, and Joe Rubin from Vinegar Syndrome. And this is, I think, their second commentary they did together, and it's really really funny. It's you learn a little bit about the movie, but it's pretty off the rails and insane, talking about things like shitting in spaghetti pots. That's the kind of commentary we're in. But Demon is a funny guy, you know, and he has this, he keeps asking Joe questions, and if you know Joe or any of these people, these are kind of assortment of characters. If you ever watched their, you know, updates or heard them on commentaries and other things, they're interesting, and it's a fun commentary. It's not the most, you know, educational, but there is some moments here and there. So yeah, Mirror Mirror looks really good. It doesn't sound the best, but it sounds all right, and it's a great cover art. Solid movie, solid little horror movie from 1990. I think you guys should check out. Okay, guys, the next one is from the MVD Rewind collection, and originally they said that they were going to try to put this on 4K, but they didn't know if they had the elements, so they avoided it, but apparently they found the elements, and now we finally have Ghoulies 2 on 4K. Now, I've talked about Ghoulies 2 a few times on the show. It's no surprise to anyone. It's absolutely one of my favorite little creature films and favorite horror movies. I love it. Grew up with it. There is nostalgia speaking, but it picks up not where Ghoulies 1 left off. It picks up with a kind of a priest running with a bag and being chased by a group of cultists. He stops at this rundown kind of truck stop, and in the garage there is a big vat of what he thinks is, you know, acid or acidic, something dangerous. He throws the Ghoulies in there and does a prayer over it, or prays and throws the Ghoulies in there, and before he can get out of there, the bat Ghoulie flies and knocks him in the vat of toxic waste or acid or whatever. At the same time, the Ghoulies pop out, all 4 of them fine, that he threw in there with the addition to the bat Ghoulie, and he's a skeleton. So we know that the Ghoulies are pretty fucking indestructible. They beefed up the puppets. They look much better this time around. Carl Buechler has worked on the first 3 Ghoulies. I'm not sure if he worked on part 4. He actually directed part 3. But his effects are really solid in this. They keep it down to 1 Ghoulie per model. So, you know, there's a toad, the fish, the rat, the cat, and the bat, you know, or whatever people think they are. They are little imps from hell. So it doesn't really matter what animal characteristics they are exactly, except it's pretty on. You can't really deny that the cat and the rat are cat and rat. Some people say that it's a goat. They are wrong. It's not a goat Ghoulie. But anyways, it also follows the story of these 2 kind of traveling, you know, carnival people. One is Royal Dano and Uncle Ned, an alcoholic former magician, and the son here, the nephew here. Hey, nephew, that's what he calls him. And it opens up with kind of this strange moment where, you know, Uncle Ned's been drinking, and he's like, that's the fullest moon I ever seen. So right away, the movie starts with kind of this magic versus capitalism kind of deal, where a carnival belongs, it runs on magic, while the guy who eventually comes in and wants to shut down their attraction, Satan's Den, which is a little haunt, he says it runs on money, it runs on profit. So we immediately have this kind of, you could even look at it anyways in an art film, or you know what I mean, that there's people out there who want to make something that is, you know, a product that sells, and there's people that want to make a product that is art. And that's what Ghoulies 2 is about, which is very funny if you look at it. You know, it's a little creature film, but it has that little snippet in here. It's directed by Albert Band. Dennis Paoli wrote it, who worked on a lot of the Stuart Gordon movies, so Dennis Paoli is going to put something a little special in there. It was used, they shot it with a lot of Italian crew, so you'll notice Sergio Stalavetti is actually the cinematographer, and he worked with Fulci numerous times, so that's why the movie looks good to me. It always kind of stood out as something that was a little special. You'll see Italian acting regulars, although not all Italian actors, of course, Romano Pupo and Mickey Knox from Cemetery Man. So you see these kind of people in the background here. Carrie Remsen is the female interest. She's kind of the star as well in here, and she used to do a high wire act, and I believe it's the granddaughter of Burt Remsen, who pops up in TerrorVision and things like that. So, you know, it looks spectacular on 4K. I couldn't believe it. It was, and Phil Fondacaro is in here as well, and he gets to flex his acting muscle. He's not just in a full moon movie this time around like Creeps or Bardello of Blood, which isn't a full moon movie, but you get the point, you know, or Troll, where he's just like, hey, I'm playing the small guy. Although Troll, they gave him a lot to work with, I think. But this one gives him a lot too. He's a theater actor working in Satan's Den. But yeah, so this movie has a lot of talent in and in front of the camera for a Ghoulies movie. That's why it's a vast improvement on the first one. It cheers. It kind of has the Ghoulies attacking people here and there, and what better place than a carnival? At the very end, the Ghoulies escape, and they run amok in the carnival. I love that they're all individually designed. They have their own personality. The toad thing that crawls on his 4 legs, this is the only appearance he ever was in a movie. He's my favorite Ghoulie. And it's probably because he's like essentially their pet. He seems the most dumb of them all, which is very funny. But there's a really great gag here, which is kind of like a Three Stooge gag, where they look out the door and they all jump on each other's shoulders. I love that. Kind of like the hello, hello, hello. And they're like, huh, huh? I eat that shit up when it's puppets and things like that. I think that the stop motion looks good, although it obviously is going to look a little bit different because it's, you know, how they did it back in the day. But I just adore this movie. I think that it's a lot of fun. You'll recognize Sasha, is it Baron? Or no, Sasha Cohen or Sasha something from Dazed to Confused, and Heathers is in here. You'll recognize William Butler, pops up in here, went on to direct a bunch of movies. He's in Night of the Living Dead 1990. He's in Leatherface, you know, Texas Chainsaw 3, Friday Part 7, and a slew of other movies as well. So it's got a nice cast. It's got a memorable soundtrack as well, which was later used for Ghost Town, which is another Empire Pictures production. The music is, I believe, by it's got to be Richard Band, and it's a great score. I know that Wasp is in here on the soundtrack as well. They even had a music video, "Scream Until You Like It." But it's just absolutely bonkers, weird, semi-family friendly horror movie by Empire Pictures. I mean, like, these are the movies that you say, who is this exactly for? What's really cool about this release, and what makes it stand out for people that have the Blu-ray already, is for years, we never could get an R-rated cut of this movie except on the original VHS. I think I have an original VHS sitting somewhere. And guess what, guys? Mine is not the R-rated cut either. It is the PG-13 rated cut. Anybody knows Ghoulies knows Ghoulies 2 was released on VHS on PG-13 rating and an R rating. The PG-13 was a much more common tape to get. So I don't know if I watched the R-rated cut when I was a child or not, but later MGM released the DVD and they had deleted scenes and whatnot. Not the R-rated cut, even Scream Factory's Blu-ray didn't. There was an import you could get from Germany that incorporated it, but it wasn't remastered. This is remastered. I hold up the wrong side. This is remastered. So you have the the R cut of Ghoulies in 4K. Which is really cool. The scenes that are added are more so vicious attacks on the girl who goes to look for her cat. William Butler's character, Merle, gets killed a little longer, and the guy who gets put in the dunk tank definitely gets his arm a little bit more gnawed off. So those are the kind of additions here. I think that Ghoulies 2 is a real winner. I know if you like small creatures, it is a Gremlins ripoff, but it's a lot of fun. It takes place on the carnival. Sucker for carnival, sucker for little creature movies. It looks fantastic. The sound, I noticed some hissing and popping in these 80s movies, and like I talked about Mirror Mirror, it just happens to be kind of these low-budget movies. Sometimes they don't have the best sound elements to kind of play on the updated systems. But, you know, Ghoulies 2, they'll get you. They'll get yours in the end, too. I always remembered, I thought it used to be on the trailer, they'll get you in the end. Again, I do have a poster. It's a reprint in my second bathroom of Ghoulies 2, so I'm a big fan. Yeah, as far as the features are concerned, we don't have any new ones except maybe possibly the Dennis Paoli new introduction might be the newer one. But besides that, we have the old features. We have the original cut 2 in 4K. Subtitles, introduction by Dennis Paoli, and then we have collectible poster, and we also have more toilets, more terror making of Ghoulies 2, Under a Magic Moon, interview with Dennis Paoli, deleted scenes, photo gallery, theatrical trailer. Yeah, so great stuff here. Really recommend it. And the villain in this is an asshole. He does really good. But yeah, love this stuff. Ghoulies 2. Alright guys, we have another heavy hitter for me. Another childhood favorite, similar to Ghoulies 2. We have the Guyver on 4K. That's right, Blu-ray, 4K, and compact disc. Now, the Guyver was directed by Steve Yang and Screaming Mad George, who is primarily a special effects artist. This is based off a manga from Japan, and Guyver was everywhere when I was a kid. I mean, just the tape was there, the 2 movies, and then we had a couple cartoons, Out of Control. I remember seeing a lot of Guyver, the series and everything like that, and I fell in love with this. This was kind of semi-family friendly, the VHS tape. Do I have the VHS tape? Easy to grab. I know I have one. It's probably not in order, so I'm going to avoid it. Here's me unprepared. But there's a Guyver tape somewhere, and it was originally PG-13, and being 4 or 5 years old, my mom's like, sure, you can rent that. It had monsters on the cover. So, essentially the plot of Guyver is there is an evil corporation called Kronos, and they create monsters called zoonoids. It's run by a Zoolord, and what happens is there is a bio-booster armor that is made by these Zoonoids years ago, or aliens years and years ago, that gave these kind of Zoonoids their powers and all these kind of things like that. Zoonoids are basically humans mixed, and they turn into monsters, kind of deal like that. They're genetically engineering these things, the Kronos is. But there is these bio-booster armors, there's only one left remaining, and whoever gets it, it does tenfold. If you put it on, it's 10 times, 100 times your power. So the fucking Kronos wants it, right? So boom, put it on a monster, chaos. So that's what they're looking to get. Unfortunately for them, a scientist that works for them that is a Zoonoid as well escapes with the Guyver unit. It gets lost in the process, and this young kind of guy who's into karate ends up getting it put on him, and Jack Armstrong. While at the same time, Mark Hamill is a police officer that is looking into Kronos and whatnot, trying to figure it out. And this poor guy, Jack Armstrong's girlfriend, is actually the daughter of the murdered scientist. So it all intertangles. The bad guys, the Zoonoids, come after the daughter, thinking that she might have the Guyver unit. The main goon is played by Michael Berryman. He's great he's great, and he's perfect guy to turn into a monster, right? He's got that demeanor, and he's just big and scary. Also, Peter Spellos, I think is how you say his name. He was in the Slumber Party Massacre, the Sorority House Massacre sequels, I think, or Hard to Die and stuff like Sorority, or is it Slumber Party? It's Sorority House Massacre 2 and 3, aka Hard to Die, and he's in that as what was his goofy name in those movies? I can't remember. But Jimmy Walker's also in here. We got Mark Hamill mentioned before. You got a cameo by Jeffrey Combs, and you got motherfucking David Gale as the main villain here. He's great in it. Basically, kind of a similar character to Dr. Hill. What happens is, of course, like I said, the karate guy gets the Guyver unit on him, and he doesn't really know how to use it at first. He beats up a gang in the streets that's really comical and over the top, right out of a Power Rangers episode. But soon enough, he ends up stepping up with the monsters, and there's a lot of monster versus Guyver power suit on there. It's much more R-rated than you would say Power Rangers or something in that vein. Now, Magda was gory as shit, so it's crazy that this is more aimed kind of at kids, kind of not. The Screaming Mad George effects are spectacular. He did stuff like Society, so he's got this weird kind of surreal gooey quality that's kind of unmatched when you talk about special effects. There's nobody like Screaming Mad George. I mean, the fucking name alone is great. But Steve Yang did a couple other movies, like a kids martial arts movie before this, and I don't remember if he went on to direct the sequel, Guyver 2 Dark Hero, which is rated R. But this one has a lot more money than the sequel. There's a lot of money put into this. The bad guys are great. The special effects are phenomenal. The fight choreographing is good, great, really, when you consider there's guys in suits. I love when the Guyver comes apart and he goes together. That shit's really intricate. Stop motion, maybe, possibly, very detailed. But you know what the kind of unsung hero of Guyver is the soundtrack. It is so memorable, pulse pumping. Every time I hear it, I always want to kind of fight a group of monsters in a power suit. And this song has been stuck in my head since I've been a wee lad. You know, I've seen this movie since I was 4 or 5 years old, and nostalgia is strong with this one, but I do think it is a really unique, kind of weird monster, semi-family friendly movie. Now we're talking about the cuts here. They call this the R-rated cut. And when I was a kid, there was 2 cuts. There was only the one cut on VHS. And it had a couple scenes of gore. When the gang shows up in the barn and the 2 agents show themselves to be villains, and boom, they get ripped apart and breaks the neck. In the DVD cut that was released after by New Line, they cut that out and they cut to the monster doing, oh man, instead of showing the gore. Then the Blu-ray from Arrow is also that cut. It's the shitty director's cut, which is not the director's cut. It's the cut that is more family friendly. And then Germany released a hybrid cut where the gore and these other scenes are a little bit less quality. But what they do include in those cuts is an opening that explains what Kronos is and things like that. That's not in that cut. And some maybe a little bit more comedy bits. This version, as far as I could tell, is the R-rated version. There was the gore was in there, which I loved. But there was also a scene from the other cut too, like the opening dialogue was in there, and I noticed some of the humor back. Maybe all of it was in there, but I did notice a couple scenes of that. So this is definitely the preferred cut of all of them, I would say, and it's finally there. I mean, look at this, how badass these monsters are. I think this is a movie where we didn't know how spoiled we were, honestly. And now we think, and we were just getting good movies, or interesting, or crazy movies, or creative, or movies with tons of hard work all the fucking time. And now, well, we're not. I mean, they come along, and there's some great movies, but they're not this intricate. And this intricate for something this weird is kind of refreshing. I love the Guyver. Looks great in 4K. Sounds great in 4K. Very impressed with On Earth film. First 4K from On Earth. Hope they have more, but the Guyver's a great get. Love it. So as far as Brian used to also produce this, who's a great director and producer himself. As far as the special features, here we go. New 4K from R-rated 35 camera neg, 1851 aspect ratio in HDR. New commentary with co-writer Scream Mad George Steve Wang, narrated by Don O'Brien, the author of Budget Biomorphs, The Making of Guyver Films. New commentary with actor SF artist Evil Ted Smith and Creature Shop Lab Tech miniature supervisor Wyatt Weed. And then this is on Blu-ray only. We have the commentary, of course. And then we have another, both the commentaries, and then we have new interview with producer Brian Usda, new interview with co-director Scream Mad George. Mad George is like 50 minutes long, and he's just super cool. He's an interesting guy, laughs a lot. New suit test, a commentary by co-director Scream Mad George and Steve Wang. New outtakes and commentary by co-director Scream Mad George and Steve Wang. New gag reel and commentary by co-directors, of course, the two production artwork gallery, and a CD and collector's booklet. Soundtrack is amazing. Guyver looks great in 4K. Thank God. We got it in the United States. Throw away your Arrow release unless it has some new features on there that this doesn't. But that's not the good cut. Your old DVD's not the good cut. That's a poopy cut. I remember watching it being not happy. But yeah, Guyver on 4K, finally, in its true form. Okay, the next one up is Homework from On Earth Films, On Earth Classics as well. And this is a 1982 sex comedy. And this is a little different from the typical sex comedies, because when I think sex comedy, I immediately go to Revenge of the Nerds and Porky's and that kind of shit. Not as serious or as good as Fast Times at Ridgemont High and Last American Virgin or anything like that. Not as rapey as the Revenge of the Nerds and Porky's, but just as horny. There we go. So, Homework. This stars, of course, Joan Collins. That's the big name in here. And, you know, there was a whole kind of interview with the producer on here, and he talks about Joan Collins just putting up a big stink about showing nudity and all these kind of things like that, and kind of bad-mouthing the movie, making the producer look like a pervert. He used to be a producer over in Britain and worked on a lot of Amicus movies, so he has a long history. Obviously not thrilled with all of that stuff in here, and that's kind of the backdrop of this movie. So this one opens up, and we kind of follow this character who just kind of wants to be famous. He wants to be a musician and make all these songs. He's constantly daydreaming, worried about getting laid. Oh, geez, who's the actress in here? Carrie Snodgrass is his psychiatrist. I love Carrie Snodgrass from The Attic and stuff. And not so much Trick or Treats from 82, but, you know, she's a great actress. And she's okay in this. She's pretty funny, I guess. Basically, this guy is always worried about not having sex. So he'll have these constant like daydreams where, you know, women walk in and then show their breasts. Tons of nudity, tons of sex stuff in here. Joan Collins' daughter is obsessed with swimming. This guy who wants to start the band is into her. She's always constantly practicing for swimming. That's all she cares about, never pays attention. This guy's buddy is also into the idea of making a band and all these things. And we have all these kind of follow the band members around. One's kind of a meek kind of girl that can sing, and her father's really strict. And then we, of course, have the girl who's obsessed with the rock star Wings Hauser, who plays an ultimate creep in this movie. He's really good in this, too. He's just perfect. What's his name? Like, I want to say it's Red or something. He's just a fucking creep, but he's great in it. Wings Hauser, of course, from everything from Vice Squad to Nightmare at Noon. But he's really good in this. And the side characters, they're all good. The acting is solid, of course. You know, you see the cover here. Joan Collins is gonna graduate this guy, seduce him a little bit, but she's always constantly remembering her past and thinking about her good times and all these kind of things. So it's like a midlife kind of crisis where she's looking for something and he's looking for something. So hey, why not have underage sex with a kid, right? It's a woman doing it to a boy, so it's not a big deal, right? I'm sure he's 18 in the movie, but you know what I'm saying? That's just that kind of 80s kind of vibe, like, hey, it doesn't matter, hey. But overall, I thought this was better than its reputation. I'm seeing reviews like 1 star, half a star. I'm like, I was fine with it. It's kind of exactly what I expected. A little, you know, when a bunch of people don't get raped, I'm like, oh, that's kind of a surprise for a 1980s sex comedy, you know? No rape. But statutory kind of. But hey, it is what it is. I'll take it. I do enjoy these. They're a product of their time. It goes without saying on every movie I cover, right? I mean, I'm not. The last time I've been offended has been hundreds of years. You know, I just don't have the energy for it. But you know, Homework, enjoyable. Looks good, sounds good. Low budget, kind of. Didn't seem like it had millions of dollars, but it's nice to see, you know, Joan Collins, Wings Hauser, Carrie Snodgrass, and the kid cast is pretty solid. They're interesting backstories. Not a horrible movie. A lot of weird daydreaming, kind of pieced together nonsense, but it's not horrible. As far as the special features are concerned, we have interview with legendary producer Max Rosenberg. I enjoyed it, and it looks good, and it's another On Earth Classics, number 15. Okay, the next one up is from Fun City Pictures, and this is one I didn't really know much about. This is called Stranger's Kiss, and the big actor in here for me is Peter Coyote. The other actors and actresses in the movie and stuff have done roles, and they've been in a bunch of stuff. They're not like the most memorable people to me. And Peter Coyote, of course, Southern Comfort, E.T., lots of movies. He's in those crappy Return of the Living Dead 4 and 5 sequels. He's good in this. So it's a period piece in the 50s, making films and whatnot, and Peter Coyote is a director. He's on set. And basically his production assistant or his producer or whatever this guy is, I can't think of his title. There's like 3 people making this movie. He's the guy who pops up in Strange Behavior from '81, the Aussie kind of slasher movie. He's the main guy in that. He's in this completely. I didn't recognize him at first. I was like, oh shit, that is him. But essentially they're trying to make this film, and they need money, so they're borrowing from this kind of gangster kind of guy. And his wife is going to be, or his girlfriend is going to star in it. And they're looking for, people to hire on this movie, and they find this kind of guy from New York, and he's got his curly hair, and they hire him to be the boxer, and he starts to have kind of fling with this woman. He starts to like her, tries to win her over, all these kind of things, while the incredibly jealous boyfriend who's producing this movie does not like it. That's going to cause some static, it's going to cause some drama. The coolest thing about this movie is the movie will go from black and white and color, so when we're watching them film, you'll have the scenes of them in black and white, and you'll hear, of course, it will go back to color, and that stuff is really cool. It's kind of like the movie mimicking real life and whatnot. But yeah, it's interesting in that aspect. Peter Coyote's good in it. He's solid in it. But, the movie is a love story. It is a tragic love story, not in the tragic sense, like, it's some more slice of life, just kind of shit on your luck. It's not like, people cutting their wrist and dying or anything like that, but it's more of a melodramatic kind of movie about making movies, which is the most interesting part about it. Well, we do have the love story in there as well, kind of repeating what we're seeing in the film just a tad bit. I enjoyed it. I thought it was a pretty good film. I didn't absolutely love the movie myself, but as far as the special features are concerned, we have new 4K restoration from that 35 inner negative. Looked great. I'll do that. I'll admit that for sure. Newly recorded audio commentary by Walter Cha. New interviews with director co-writer Matthew Chapman, actor co-writer Blaine Novak, actor Victoria Tennant, and producer Doug Dillage. New video essay by Chris O'Neill. Theatrical trailer, Image Gallery. Yeah, and I actually enjoyed it. I thought it looked great. I thought it sounded great. It was cool to see a period piece on a movie set kind of deal, like Barton Fink or something. Not quite as good or as crazy as Barton Fink, but Stranger's Kiss, interesting stuff. Fun City always putting out interesting movies. I have a bunch of their stuff. I need to pop on in a couple and watch them and review them for you guys. I know that they put Walking the Line, I think, the Robert Forster, Joe Spinell movie. I love that. So yeah, check out more for sure. All right, we're going to get in those 1982 movies.
I know I'm human. If you were all these things, then you just attack me right now. So some of you are still human. This thing doesn't want to show itself. It wants to hide inside an imitation. It'll fight if it has to. But it's vulnerable out in the open. If it takes us over, then it has no more enemies. Nobody left to kill it. And then it's won.
You son of a bitch, you moved the cemetery, but you left the bodies, didn't you? You son of a bitch, you left the bodies and you only moved the headstones! You only moved the headstones! Why? Why?
For a girl like you to come into my life, I've been waiting for a girl like you, who love and will survive. I've been waiting someone new to make me feel alive. Yeah.
What's in the basket?
Open season!
How do we know she is alive?
Say, please stop it. There's no more time. You've got to. Please stop it. Stop it now. Turn it off. Turn it off. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop
All right, first up is actually one from Mondo Macabro, and this is Sex Apocalypse. Yes, that's if I got to go out in the apocalypse, I definitely want it to be a sex apocalypse. So yeah, this is 82, and this is more of a kind of erotic, kind of crime thriller deal. Now the director on this one, this is a Spanish film, Carlos Arud. I'm sure he directed other films. He's not a name that pops out to me like Paul Naschy or Jess Franco or Eugenio Martin or any of those guys like that. He's not somebody that's super, or even Del Osorio. He's not somebody that's embedded in my mind for years. So this does have a cast that people I think will recognize. It has Ajita Wilson, who is in the year previous, she's in Sadomania for Jess Franco, and the year previous for that I think she's in Escape from Hell, which is that trashy women in prison movie if I'm not mistaken, and Lena Romay. Now, Lena Romay is in every Jess Franco movie. This same year, she's in Mansion of the Damned. She also is she in Oasis of the Zombies? I can't remember. I just watched it. I feel like anytime I'm watching a Jess Franco movie that's post a certain time, I'm like, oh, Lena Romay's in that, right? So it's weird that you're watching this and it's no Jess Franco. And it's Spanish. So, yeah, so what happens here is we have a group of 5 terrorists, 3 women and 2 men. And the one guy is kind of the leader of the group, and they decide to kidnap this kind of rich, this girl that's from a rich family. They kill a couple people in the process, and this group is weird. They're like hiding out in this kind of vacation house and having mass amounts of sex, and they have this kind of ideology where anybody's for anybody anytime, it doesn't matter, the girls go with the guys and all this kind of things like this. And they bring her in here, and she's very prude, she's never had sex, all this kind of stuff like that, and of course she's going to be molested and raped by a lot of these people, lesbian sex, straight sex, all these kind of things. And the main guy starts to have a kind of a thing for her, and there starts to be a little bit going on between them. Maybe she's interested, maybe she's playing him. We don't really know 100%. And they mentioned in the commentary, Troy Howarth and Nathaniel Thompson, they mentioned, the Patty Hearst case. They're covering it in the last podcast on the left right now, so that's interesting. They mentioned the Patty Hearst case where, she was kidnapped by this radical group of terrorists, and some people believe that she was, basically brainwashed into helping them. Others believe that she did it for survival and she wanted nothing to do with them. Whatever, it doesn't matter. So we have that kind of going on at the same time, and they also mentioned it was not too far out from the Manson family murders in 1969, 1970 kind of time period. So it is a little bit, but we get it. These kind of cults and everything like that are still in a bunch of movies. Spain at the time, after the president died, or Franco, the dictator, I should say, Franco, not to be confused with just Franco, movies got crazy sexual. So that's, a lot of these directors started just doing crazy shit. So yeah, there's a lot of sex, there's a lot of nudity. There's actually a couple versions of this movie. This version only has one on here, from my understanding. It is the 2K scan of the S-rated version from the original negative. The other one is more hardcore stuff. A lot of inserts. It runs a lot longer. It's more hardcore sex. But there's plenty of sex and nudity in here otherwise, The group starts to bicker, of course, and there's politics being played until, there is some nasty stuff that happens at the very end. I don't want to spoil anything, but yeah. This one's pretty decent, pretty solid kind of thriller stuff. It does remind me a bit of kind of the Brazilian kind of weird kind of ones I watched from 81, like Violence and Flesh and that vein. But I do think it's probably cinematography and budget is bigger than that. It's a good looking movie with fairly good looking people. Ajita Wilson is kind of iconic. She's been in a lot of things. She was a trans actress, one of the first ones. And it's kind of like, you're always like, in 1980, and stuff like that, 70s and early 80s, you're having directors put her in the film, and you're like, that's cool, man. I mean, like, it's crazy that so many people were so progressive back then, and we just seem to be dealing with the same shit over and over again. People arguing, it's like, guys, why are we doing this still? Who gives a shit? Who gives a fuck, right? Like, but it just seems like at times we are regressing, or people are worried about shit that does not concern them. But Sex Apocalypse, it looks really good. I thought they did. It's a good looking movie. It's shot good. There's a lot of like people swimming and brightly lit times. I don't think much night shooting is going on in Sex Apocalypse. Great commentary. Love Troy Howarth and Nathaniel Thompson. They've been on the show, so I'm biased, of course. But as far as the special features are concerned, we have the S version, new 2K scan, and then we have an interview with the director. With interview with Carlos Allure, biographer Miguel Angel Plana, interview with writer and filmmaker Richard Regnant, audio commentary from Troy Howarth and Nathaniel Thompson. Of course, it's region free, and we have English subtitles. So check out Sex Apocalypse if it sounds like it's up your alley. Okay, this one I was really excited to check out. It came highly recommended by a lot of people. They didn't know if it was 81 or 82, but it lands in 82 in Internet Movie Database, so here we go. And this is The Appointment. This is a BFI release, British Film Institute release, and I heard a lot of good things about this. It stars Edward Woodward, who is in The Wicker Man. I think he's in See China and Die, and he's in a movie I'll be talking about later today too. But Edward Woodward is a really good actor. I love him in The Wicker Man, and this is a British movie. I think it's a TV film by Lindsay Vickers. And this is weird. This is a weird fucking movie. Watching this, it does remind me of Let's Scare Jessica to Death or Haunting of Julia. It's one of those ones where you're like, I really ought to watch that again. But when you walk away, you're thinking about it, and you're like, how did that? So, The Appointment is weird as shit. We have this narration where this girl's, there's a shortcut through the woods from school, and she's pulled in by this unknown force. Just vanishes. Nobody ever finds her again. And then the narration kind of stops. We kind of cut to Edward Woodward, and he has, he's talking to the mechanic. He's like, how do you break something to somebody? You don't want to hurt their feelings. And what he has to do is he has to miss his daughter's kind of recital or kind of performance on the stage. And he's married, and they have a pretty good home life, it seems. And he tells her, and her daughter seems incredibly hurt by it. But he can't do it because he has to fill in for someone else at work because there's a pregnancy and someone's sick. So he has to drive really far and then come back. But there's all these weird premonitions shit starting to happen. He has an awful nightmare, and his wife has weird nightmares and visions, and all this stuff is just almost like, foreboding or ominous shit happening, and it feels like these are little, like, tiny premonitions, like The Psychic by Fulci, or something just like that's not right. It doesn't feel right, and these little tiny coincidences are all going to add up into chaos. And what happens is, he's driving, and weird things start to happen. He has these flashes, and we're kind of going down these different timelines, right? We're having these different kind of timelines pop up and whatnot, and flashes of weirdness. And I don't want to spoil anything, but it's haunting. It's weird. It's creepy. A lot of people compare it to a nightmare. I don't disagree with that because the logic is not 100% there, but it makes sense while you watch it. Kind of like a David Lynch movie. Like, what the fuck? When you try to explain it, like, you see, she wasn't her. She was actually someone else, and she dreamt that she was her, but it was all that. And now she's waking up, and it's like, what are you talking about, man? I don't fucking know what you're talking about. But that's what I would try to explain this. But you see these little snippets of the past, and it comes to the future, and you're like, oh, shit. That's why, that was there, or that's why they said this, or the dogs on the side of the truck are basically the dogs in the woods that his daughter is seeing, and it's a bizarre movie. Edward Woodward's great in it. It's really, like, I don't want to say drawn out in the segments. It's tedious in a way that gets you on the edge of your seat, like nail biting, I would say at times. Worst car accident ever. It was pretty long, and man, that car was totaled. But The Appointment, really recommended. Looked really good. I think it was TV. I don't know what they remastered it or how it looked, what they did here. It's in standard, present on Blu-ray in standard def, but they cleaned it up enough to where I didn't even notice it. It looks really good. We have an interview with Vickers on Vickers, and he seems like a very interesting guy. And the one thing is they also have The Lake, which is a 33-minute 1978 short he did. And there's so many similarities to this. Now, The Lake is basically... it's kind of like The Long Weekend, the Australian film, right? Where this couple goes to this lake with a dog, and something's not right. There's a bubbling in the lake, and before long, it's this haunted area, this haunted thing that just draws them in. Like, this director seems to be into just the idea of haunted places. And it's kind of like Session 9, right? Is this place haunted, or is this place just have bad vibes that make everyone that goes here not feel good and do bad things? And have bad things happen to you because you're there. The Appointment, I would, it's less like Session 9 because there actually is a haunting presence for sure in the Appointment, and The Lake, I would say, but Session 9's debatable, but it does feel like that kind of, that impending doom, right? I like this a lot. It requires a second viewing, and the same goes for stuff like Let's Scare Jessica to Death and Haunting of Julia, aka Full Circle. You're like, those require second viewings, I think. I think they get better with every time. I think it's a movie that grows with you, and I like it. And I could tell that I thought a lot of it was cool. And it's nice that the characters are so suburban. No, nothing really special, just suburban. And, you know, as some people I've heard, I'll listen to a podcast, is it Horror Movie Weekly? They say horror happens to those who deserve it least. And that happens sometimes for sure, yeah. The Appointment. Okay, guys, next up is one from Felipe Mora, I think is how you say it, Australian director. I've covered this before, and this is The Beast Within. That's right, written by Tom Holland, and this movie is sleazy. And this is the Arrow release. I have a Scream Factory as well. But rewatching this is the third or fourth time I've seen The Beast Within. I really like this movie. It's directed by an Australian guy who went on to do The Howling 2 and 3, which are weird-ass movies. It's written by Tom Holland, who went on to he wrote Psycho 2. He wrote and directed Child's Play. He directed Child's Play and Fright Night, and he did some other films as well, wrote a lot of stuff. Class of 1984. So he's done a lot of good stuff. Tom Holland and used to be an actor. It stars Ronnie Cox. I think people will know Ronnie Cox. It also has R.G. Armstrong, Lucas Skew. There's a couple other character actors in here that are skipping. Don Gordon is in here. Who else? There's a couple other guys you'd recognize right away when you see them. So this is kind of like small town backwoods horse shit. Love it. I love that shit. When you add a bunch of character actors in it, heaven. It's like if they're like, Sam Peckinpah, you got $10, you got to make a horror movie. He's like, oh, fuck, I hate horror movies. But he still makes it, and he makes The Beast Within, something like that, right? A lot of people would be like, is this a werewolf movie? No, it is a Cicada Man movie. Yeah. There's a great Joe Bob episode where he goes through the whole process of talking about, every 17 years I come back like a cicada, and he talked about this whole shit, and he talks about The Beast Within, and that's kind of what happens here. So it could be looked at as a kind of, I was a teenage werewolf, or I was a, teenage Frankenstein, that kind of coming of age horror, which was very popular in the mid to late 50s, right? That kind of coming of age horror deal. But yeah, here it is, because they wanted teenagers to be the stars here. Even though this is a lot of, discovery from the kind of the old timers and everything, like looking around and whatnot. We have a young guy here, and in the very beginning of this movie, I should start in the very beginning. It opens a lot like Humongous from '82 as well, by Paul Lynch. Good movie. I prefer The Beast Within because I'm trash. I'm white trash, So what happens is this girl, this woman and a guy were freshly married, Ronnie Cox and his wife, and they're driving, and the dog gets out of the car, and they're in this kind of backwoods area, and she runs the chase after the dog, and something attacks her in the middle of the night, and it's a brutal rape scene. The aftermath is like disgusting, and that brings me to this. Like, we're having like this like whole rape by monsters thing in the 80s. 1980, Humanoids from the Deep. 81, Galaxy of Terror, Rape Slug. And now we're having Cicada Rape Man. Like, it's this weird thing, and I was just sick on Cinema was talking about Humanoids from the Deep. And they were like, Roger Corman created a fetish, and it's like, and these movies were not helping, right? These people being raped by monsters and shit, like, it happens, like I said. I'm sure it goes all the way back to EC Comics, where a girl was in a towel and a zombie was reaching for her, and it's like, he's going after them boobies, and whatnot, and some guy was like, huh. But regardless, you have Humanoids from the Deep. It's like, we got to get monsters in here, we got to get breasts in here, why not mix them, we got to cut the runtime, and then, like, you get Galaxy of Terror, and now we have this brutal rape scene, like Humongous, right? This brutal rape scene in the beginning of from a cicada man. And then at the end, there's another rape scene because it's going to repeat itself because it's a fucking cycle because it's a cicada. But yeah, so what happens is the young man is the offspring of this rape, and they don't ever know who did the rape. We know it's a cicada man. I'm going to say this many times as I can. So he starts to have these terrible, violent urges, and he wants to go back to this small town where he was. You know, kind of like a bug or a bird. It's going to migrate back to where it was, where it knows. And he is possessed by the person who was the original cicada that was done wrong by a lot of the people in this small town, including, you know, the coroner and Lucas Skew, who's in Frailty and Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, and Don Gordon, who runs the damn town. Don Gordon's great. He's got this toupee on. You know, if you've seen Don Gordon in The Borrower or the last movie, the one with Dennis Hopper. Don Gordon, underrated actor. He's also in Zero Population Growth with Oliver Reed. He's a good actor. You know, he's one of these guys I've seen a bunch, and I just started registering him, and I'm like, oh, that fucking guy. I love that guy. You know, R.G. Armstrong is a doctor. One of my favorite character actors. And Ronnie Cox is solid as well, from Deliverance to RoboCop. Can't go wrong with Ronnie Cox. But yeah, and the wife, I can't think of her name. I know if I seen it, maybe I would know it. I feel always bad sometimes. Paul Clemens is in here too. Baby Bish, I think that's her. Yeah, so it's like sometimes I'm like that, you know. I like a lot of these old movies. Sometimes the female characters, if they're just a mom or somebody, they don't really get the spotlight that a lot of the other actors do, unfortunately, unless you're like a big sex starlet or something like that, right? But yeah, unless it's focused. I think 81 had a lot of that because you had Zoe Lund, you had Susan Tyrell, you had Jessica Harper. They all got their shining moments, but they're the stars of the movie. But yeah, this one, like I said, great character actors and great revenge, and the kid starts to kind of turn more monsterish and go out and kill these people. It's gory. It's fun. It's got a great small town feel. I think the drunk in the movie, the guy who plays his childhood friend, maybe it's the same drunk and hysterical, which I think I wrongly listed him in Pandemonium. I think I was talking about Hysterical, the guy who plays the Crazy Ralph clone in Hysterical, the parody. I think that it's Jack Scarlett. Is he in this? You know what I mean? I feel like that's him. But this Blu-ray I prefer over the Scream Factory. It has subtitles. I think it looks really good. It sounds good. I love the cicada deal. I love cicadas. And I think using a cicada man is really creepy and gross. And so the plot does get a little sloppy in here. Where it's like, it's got Jimmy's in his body, and it's like, whatever. That's just weird, like, revenge thing. But I guess bugs have this ingrained memory. I don't fucking know. It's kind of nonsense at certain points. But the revenge is good. The gore is good. The story is good. The small town feel is good. And of course, he starts to kind of date this girl that's super nice, and she's got this abusive piece of shit father who was involved with the original kind of crime. You know, he's going to be in there, and he's a kind of memorable character actor as well. But the guy who runs the library, he's a guy you've seen a bunch of times with the glasses, and he has a really gross death involving a bunch of meat on him, and he's like, I'll just mix the hamburger with this bread, and it's just like, Jesus, that's fucking nasty. But he's a really good character actor too. I really like The Beast Within, if you guys haven't noticed, from 82. So, as far as the special features on here, we have new audio commentary by director Felipe Mora, moderated by Callum Wydell. I Was a Teenage Cicada, The Making of Beast Within, an in-depth look at Felipe Mora's creature feature, classic featuring interviews with writer Tom Holland, actors Paul Clemens, John Dennis Johnson, Catherine Mulfett, and effects wizard Gary Emmendorf, storyboarding The Beast, an all-out new animated featurette in which Felipe Mora discussed the film's journey from storyboard to the screen, image gallery, including rare production stills and private collection of Paul Clemens, plus new photographs of various special effects props, collection of star... Yeah, so that's very cool. Yeah, the special effects are cool. A lot of bladder effects, if anybody remembers those from the 80s and the 70s and whatnot. Shivers, Alien, Howling, a lot of bladder effects. But good stuff. The Beast Within. All right, next up from 82 is Blood Song. That's right. This is actually sealed. I watched it online. I know, it's like, Dave, why do you have it in your sealed? This is a BCI. Because I waited 20 years to open it, and I'm not opening it now. And it goes for a pretty penny, even though Mausoleum has been widely released. And Blood Song... you know, it's a VHS rip on here, so who gives a shit? Yeah, so this is, who the big guy in here is Frankie Avalon. This movie's fucking nonsense. This movie is pure nonsense. Donna Wilkes, and of course, one of my favorites, Richard Jekyll's in here. Gotta love Richard Jekyll. Luca Brava, Sleeping with the Fishes from, Evil Speak, and Godfather's also in here. Lenny something, I can't think of. He's in it for like 5 seconds. This is pure nonsense. This is hilarious. Like, you know, in Pieces, when the kid, like, is making the dirty puzzle and he kills his mom and, like, when he's all fucked up. And you always have those moments where, like, oh, Christmas Evil, it's like, oh, he saw them giving mom Santa Claus a blowjob and now he's all fucked up. This one is the most absurd. So, This boy loves playing the flute. He's playing the flute. Dada, he only knows that little song. His dad comes home and he notices his wife is cheating on somebody else. This husband kills them both, blows his brains out. We realize the kid playing the flute sees it all. He plays the flute. He ends up in an insane asylum years later. He ends up escaping, from my understanding, or possibly getting released. And he's out and about. Also, we're following the story of this girl who is partially crippled, her drunk dad and Richard Jekyll, and his wife, of course, who obviously they had a car accident. And that was his fault. Think Don't Go to Sleep, which is another movie in the 82, which involves somebody having a car accident, whatnot, because they're drunk. That's more of a Weaver guy. Weaver did it in that one. But so yeah, and we follow her boyfriend, who is, sorry about that. Follows her boyfriend as well, and Richard Jekyll's like, I don't like that boy. Jekyll is a legendary character actor and stuff like The Dark, Day of the Animals, Grizzly, The Dirty Dozen, The Devil's Brigade. Great actor, one of my favorites, like I said. He's also in Mako, Jaws of Death. So what happens is, this Frankie Avalon killer, he starts coming around and killing people. He kills the guy that picks him up, hitchhiking, steals the van. He's in a small town now. But what's really fucking bonkers and stupid, which we see in stuff like Nothing Underneath, and I believe Eyes of Lower Mars, I still need to watch that, but I think that's the premise of it, right? This kind of, connection, which goes all the way back to Dracula in the book, right? Where the Harker or Lucy, both of them kind of have the connection with Dracula after their bit. They can see where he's going and whatnot. So yeah, what we have here is this poor girl after the accident got a blood transfusion, but she got blood from our killer. So now she kind of sees what the killer sees, because that's science. That is science, guys. Look it up. Do your own research. That's how it works. It's like a Dario Argento movie, right? Where it's like Four Flies on Grey Velvet. It's like, well, you pluck out his eyeball, or a horror expression, you could see the last thing he saw. That's fact. These movies, it's like, they don't give a fuck about science. It's already hard enough to believe that this guy is completely scarred and witnessed that. Now he has this flute that he carries around. On top of that, we have another character who is directly connected through him through blood. One of those things is like, it's hard enough to swallow. It's just like these two. It's kind of like a serious, kind of like a psychological killer movie, and then the complete bullshit kind of like psychic. It's like mixing them both together. And I was just like, whatever, man, whatever. It's funny. The kills are pretty decent, pretty solid. The killer is pretty cheesy. I like Jekyll. He's at one point like drinking a beer, yelling at his daughter, and he's like, oh yeah, his poor crippled daughter. You feel sorry for the main girl. She seems like a genuinely sweet, nice person. The boyfriend seems like a nice guy too. Jekyll's an asshole, but there is a scene where he squares up with the killer, and it's brutal. Like, the gore in that is brutal. Overall, I liked Bloodsong. Is it great? No. Is it a silly, kind of weird slasher movie from 82? Yeah. Is it ever going to get a Blu-ray? Probably not. This movie's probably... I don't know. Don't quote me on this, but I feel like the negatives have to be out of here. This one seems like it would have been released already. I mean, like, a lot of the BCI stuff has been released, including, those Mexican horror films and things like that. But a lot of the BCI stuff has been picked up and released, including Stanley. And so, I don't know what's up with Bloodsong. I would like to see it get a Blu-ray, but we don't know. Who knows? Richard Jekyll's fine in it. The movie's decent. Weird that Frankie Avalon's in here, but it is a memorable slasher. It's like the better version of Home Sweet Home, if I had to say. Like, not even better, around the same caliber, like, right, where you just keep watching these kind of like mediocre to bad slashers, and before you know it, you're like, I kind of like it. Why? It's like, I don't know, maybe I've seen it too many times. You just pick up on stuff. But anyways, that is Bloodsong. Next up is gonna be a quickie, or it should be. This is Coming Soon, directed by John Landis, produced by Mick Garris, starring Jamie Lee Curtis. And this is a lot like, Terror in the Isles, where it's essentially just a clip show. But this is the clip show from 82, focusing on, of course, the Universal monsters. I'm going to say the first thing I noticed is this is not very well edited. This is not like a perfectly edited film coming soon. Jamie Lee Curtis is essentially on the sets of Universal, and she'll be like, she'll kind of have these weird transition things. And somebody who just did a video essay with a lot of transitions and talking movies, these transitions reach just as far, if not further than that. So, I mean, like, it is very low budget, it's cheap, it's edited on whatever VHS I probably. So, like, the edits and everything, it's a little clunky, but it is fun seeing and reliving all those Universal horror movies and stuff. And there's cool scenes where they'll be like, cut to a girl, they'll cut to like 5-6 girls screaming, but of course we see the Universal stuff from, the Lon Chaney Senior stuff all the way to Dracula, Frankenstein. Then we get to this Atomic Age Cage, and of course we have Psycho. The best stuff is having Hitchcock cut in there with the promos he used to do. That's really cute. That's really fun. Jamie Lee Curtis has fun on set. You know, she's doing the best she can. That's where originally Jamie Lee Curtis and John Landis met, I believe, and had connected, and that's why she ends up being in Trading Places with, you know, Dan Aykroyd and Eddie Murphy 1 year later in 83, so, or maybe 84, I think it's 83. But yeah, so that's pretty cool that John Landis thought she was funny, so he put her in Trading Places, and boom, now she's in A Fish Called Wanda, she's in True Lies, you know, and she was in a lot of horror movies before that, but then after that, she's a comedy actress too, so that's cool. So it's obviously important in Jamie Lee Curtis's career, and it's a fun little kind of clip show, trailer show, coming soon. Not horrible, not as good as Terror in the Aisles. What were those really cheapy ones made in '85? Terror on Tape, and there's a couple other ones too that were out there. But yeah, this one's all right. Okay, the last one from 1982 is Ferat Vampire, and this, I believe, is a Czechoslovakian movie. I do not have a copy, although there is a foreign Blu-ray with English subtitles. I've tried to get a hold of it. Really expensive. So, Ferat Vampire, or Ferat Vampire, this is a weird fucking movie, guys. Years before Blood Car, we have a movie about a vampire car, a car that feeds on blood to drive. So, essentially, at the very beginning here, these guys, this paramedic, doctor, a couple paramedics get this call. They're supposed to go help this person. They don't know where they're looking for it, yada, yada, yada. They almost get in this car accident because this crazy driver's driving this weird car. Come to find out, this car ends up being down the road, kind of crashed, and there's a woman in there, and her foot looks completely broken. She's not dead. Another ambulance comes and takes her away, and he's like, what's going on? I'm a doctor. Why are you taking her away? What the fuck is happening? It seems really shady. She ends up going there, and they tell him she's died. She died. It looked like she bled to death or whatever, all these weird kind of things like that. And nothing really adds up. A strange man starts to kind of talk to him, and because he's onto something, and this guy seems completely lunatic, crazy. He's like, that car is drinking blood. His other, paramedic ambulance driver was a former racer, so she's interested in the race aspect and this car that they were driving. So she starts to actually drive for this company as well, and he's completely concerned with her because he loves her. He starts to get involved with the girl who died's twin sister and the mother, who's really weird, and it starts to get really complicated and bizarre. There's this big race coming out, and he's chasing after this car, and there's, obviously this giant conspiracy. He's having nightmares about this vampire car and weird shit like that. But there's a weird twist at the very end, and it kind of basically says, if you focus or try to bring something down, sometimes you just shine a light on it and make it fucking worse for everybody or everything, or shine light on this product. No such thing as bad publicity, but Ferat Vampire is an interesting movie. It looks really good. It's shot well. It's acted well. It's a weird, zany kind of movie. It's taken seriously on such a weird, bonkers-esque subject, but obviously Blood Car would come years later, 2008. Very fun movie. This is not quite as fun as Blood Car. It's just as weird. These Czechoslovakian or Eastern European horror films are really hit and miss, and I really like this one. Sometimes they're masterpieces. Sometimes they're just like, I'm far out, man. I can't get this. I can't understand this. Something like Daddy, My Frost from 91. I was just like, I don't fucking know what is happening here. But sometimes I'm in tune with them. And sometimes they're just masterpieces, but hard to follow, but rewarding, like Hard to Be a God, which isn't a horror film, but some could say it is. But, I'm just saying this one is good. It's just interesting conspiracy theory horror film about a blood car. Vampire car. Ferat Vampire or Ferat Vampire. I believe it's Ferat. It's Ferat. Yeah, Ferat. All right, we're going to get in the Patreon pick, and I can't remember who picked this. I think it was Eau Claire. And it's not Christmas time, but here we go anyways. We're going to be talking about A Christmas Carol from 1984. This stars... Clive Donner directed this. Not too familiar with his work. This stars, of course, George C. Scott. Legendary actor. One of my favorites from stuff like The Changeling, Doctor Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. George C. Scott is a phenomenal actor, and I can't think of anybody better to play Scrooge. Also, Edward Woodward is in here. Phenomenal performance. You have Angela Pleasance and Donald Pleasance's daughter. You have Michael Gough in here. David Warner, another one of my favorite actors of all time, who popped up in 1980's The Island and Waxwork and a million other things from the Titanic. From all the way to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Part 2. Secret of the Ooze. What is the secret, guys? Turns people into fucking giant monsters. But what ooze doesn't? So anyways, The Christmas Carol, it's a legendary story written by, Charles Dickens. It's been done a million times before and after this. My favorite rendition has always been Scrooged by Richard Donner from 88, 87, 87, 88 with Bill Murray. Love that movie to death. The Muppets even did Scrooge, which is a great rendition. Disney did Scrooge. And there's one with, of course, Patrick Stewart. A million versions of this movie for good reason. It's one of the greatest American stories. Or is it even American? I doubt it's American. Charles Dickens? I don't know. Fucking now I'm showing my ignorance here. One of the greatest books ever written, Christmas Carol, or most popular books ever written, I should say. I think it's a great one. So we have Scrooge, who is a cheap piece of crap, and he bah humbugs Christmas all the time. His nephew always comes to visit him, try to invite him to, Christmas dinner. He always avoids it. He has a worker under named Bob Cretchen, who is played by David Warner, who has a sick kid in Tiny Tim. And, I think Susanna York is also in here as his wife. Also great actress, if I'm not mistaken. So basically, he hates Christmas. And you're like, why is this guy so mean and miserable and all these things like that? And what happens is his old boss, his old business partner comes to visit him and warns him of 3 ghosts. He's dead. 3 ghosts will come visit you. Ghosts of Christmas past, present, and of times to come. The first one, of course, takes him through his youth, and you see his father, you see these lost loves, all these things like that. They're gonna, hurt a sentimental old man who's bitter, and you kind of see that, underneath his tough exterior, there was something underneath. We go to the present, and he sees all the things that, he's not helping. All these things that he could help. And Edward Woodward is the ghost of Christmas Present, and he's a giant. And he's very cheery, and it's so cool to see him being something like The Appointment and Wicker Man, where he's stiff. Not the Appointment, he's kind of just very, tame, middle-aged father, good guy. Wicker Man, he's that, that sexually frustrated, person who's just completely isolated and in himself, and what's the word I'm looking for? There's a great word that I'm looking for, but you guys get what I'm saying. And then in this one, he's this big jolly guy who laughs and hits on Ebenezer. He makes fun of Ebenezer. He says these things like that and all these fucked up things and takes him to these places. But there's these great moments where he leaves him under the bridge in the story. He's like, I don't know this place. It's cold and it's strange to me. And it's just seeing George C. Scott freak out and yell and do all these things. It's just perfect. He's perfect for Scrooge. And of course the future. And this is one of these movies, right, where we all get bitter. We all, get unsentimental. And when it finally hits you, right, the Christmas Carol is the only movie that could get me into the Christmas spirit, I think, because the idea of that tough, rough exterior melting off somebody and then finally understanding what the true holiday spirit is, or just true being a decent fucking person, humanity, kindness should have been my profession, is what his old business partner says, and it's a heartwarming fucking story, right? Dickens was always the guy who was be like, I'll add some more words in here to get paid by the word, whatever, the length. But hey, he did a fucking phenomenal job in that story, and it translates so well. And it's a good message to have, right? And we can get bitter. And we can, and live in the past, or forget or always be thinking toward the future, and never living in the present, or never helping anything, or all these kind of things, or forget the past, and we're doomed to repeat it, or doomed to never learn from it. But The Christmas Carol is a fantastic story. This is one of the best renditions I've seen. Superbly acted, well shot. It's just a great movie. I mean, it's the fucking Christmas Carol. That's why it's so strange when I get stuff like this, and I'm like, yeah, what am I going to say? Yeah, it's a great story turned into a really good movie, and I love George C. Scott. Like I said, he's one of these guys you could watch read the phone book. From Exorcist 3 to Changeling to Doctor Strangelove to even Firestarter, which isn't a great movie. He's good in it. I love watching the guy, man. He's really fucking good. Hardcore. And he's great in this too. One of his best performances for sure. And I love when he plays a joke on David Warner. David Warner, underrated actor too. From the peck and paw to the whore. But yeah, he plays that joke. He's like, you're late. And he's like, what time is it? And that stuff's all great. But love Christmas Carol and whatnot. Great stuff. Let's get these questions, comments, concerns, all that jazz. Watch my knees pop. Ken Coakley, 8366. American Gigolo was originally written for John Travolta, but he turned it down. Richard Gere owes Travolta a great debt of gratitude because every time Travolta turned down a role, Gere would take it. Travolta was the first pick of Days of Heaven, American Gigolo, An Officer and a Gentleman, and Chicago. Gere was original choice for the role Chico in Lords of the Flashbush. The role was written specifically for Gere because he was friends with screenwriter Perry King, who was originally cast as Wimpy, did a test with Gere and Susan Blakely, in which King was flirting with Blakely and Gere just stood there brooding. Then they did rehearsals in the scene and the malt shop when Stanley, played by Stanley, played by Sylvester Stallone, and Chico were trading hits. Stallone pulled back on his punches like he was supposed to do, but Gere didn't and became overly aggressive, so Gere was fired and Perry King became Chico. They had to find an actor to play Wimpy. The audience, they auditioned a bunch of actors and found De Niro, but he committed to another film, so they hired Paul Mace. Gere did some terrific films in the 70s. He had a small role in the crime thriller report called Report to the Commissioner. I do have that. Starring Michael Moriarty from The Stuff, Return to Salem's Lot, as well as the Alpha Coda from Alien, Blue Collar, Midnight Run. Gere was also had a sizable part in the Diane Keaton film Looking for Mr. Goodbar. There's a scene in the film which Keaton and Gere at a coffee shop and Keaton is reading The Godfather. My favorite Richard Gere movie was the low-budget film called Blood Brothers. Gere stars with Tony Lobianco, Paul Sorvino, Kevin McMillan, Robert Englund, and Mary Lou Henner. It was shown on NBC on... Sorry, my leg is cramping, guys, so you guys see an old man Dave cramp his leg. NBC on Father's Day, but the title was changed to A Father's Love. I also like the remake of Breathless in '83. That's a professional, guys. The show must go on, even when I get a cramp in my leg from doing something stupid. And last week's comment section, you said that you didn't believe in the Amityville story. I disagree with you on that. I've always believed it, but I saw a documentary, My Amityville Horror, about Daniel Lutz, the oldest stepson. This guy looks like he's been through the ringer a few times. As a recovering addict, I noticed that he may have been on some heavy drugs to cope with some harmful memories. Neither Daniel nor Chris got along with George. That may have played a small part in Daniel's traumatic childhood, but there's something else. He seems very emotional about when he talks about when the film came out and the other kids taunted him. Something otherworldly must have done that to Daniel. He also tells the same stories as his brother Chris. Also, George and Kathy Lutz took numerous lie detector tests and passed every one of them. With Daniel, his continuing emotional pain gets stronger with every Amityville film. Even though the current crop of films have nothing to do with the Lutz family, just to name Amityville might cause great sadness for all three siblings. I'm sure you must have seen My Amityville Horror in the past. If not, it's an interesting documentary about a man trying to find inner peace. I'm not sure who directed that, but I have no doubt that some people believe something happened. I just have a very hard time in believing any of that stuff. The only one, I'm not bothered by Amityville, and I do think there's places that are possibly so poorly structured or looking or something wrong with them that can cause people to go nuts. The one story that does bother me is Exorcism of Emily Rose, just because someone died there, and it's just that whole thing was bullshit to me. I think that movie comes off preachy. I don't think Amityville or Exorcist or those movies come off preachy at all, or The Entity. I think that a lot of people behind the movies believe it happened, and they're telling the true story that they believe is true. Maybe not all the Amityvilles, of course. I think that a lot of that was bullshit with Amityville. I don't think necessarily the people involved with The Exorcist thought it was bullshit, and I don't think the people involved with The Entity thought it was bullshit either. I mean, why can't I think of the two that big guys from The Conjuring, the wife and husband? They're full of shit. They might have believed it, but they did a lot of shady shit to make money with books and things like that. So, and that doesn't mean that none of it's true. It means that they were more concerned about money. They might have believed it, but they definitely, a lot of the stories behind the scenes were not great on them. Not to dismiss anything that any of the people that actually suffered through that stuff said, just to say the Warrens, what they said. They can go fuck. Dime Drawer IV. Dave listened to you on the final part of the Exploding Heads Top 200 Movies. As always, your commentary stole the show. I miss listening to you on those longer shows. I hope you have some more in you down the road. I appreciate that. I might have a couple. Getting gray. Nick Mua from Belgium. I've always been a bit annoyed that performances in horror films don't seem to count. I immediately knew Skeet Ulrich was good after seeing Scream. Many critics seem to have only become aware of his talent post Ride with the Devil, and As Good as It Gets, which Jack Nicholson stole the show as he often did. Still, Ride with the Devil highlights at least a couple of threads from complicated tapestry in the U.S. history. That it does. Skeet Ulrich is my least favorite in that movie, though, his performance, but I don't think he's awful. I think he's better at Scream, of course. The Last Stop in Yuma always intrigued me. Now I know you enjoyed it. I simply must check it out. Many thanks, Sensei Dave. You're welcome. Thank you for watching. And I think you'll like The Last Stop in Yuma County. It's very good. Do you like horror films of Pete Walker? If yes, do you have a favorite? For me, it's The Flesh and Blood Show and Frightmare. Pete Walker is really a blind spot for me, which is, I hate saying that. I've seen House of Long Shadows, and I like it. I have a bunch of his movies, probably all his horror films, and I need to watch them. I will soon. The Civil War, Native American extermination, Watergate. Many movies have been made about these key historical moments. Which part of your country's history hasn't made it to the silver screen but should? I'm sure all of it has. I'm sure the internment camps of the Japanese have. Maybe not as many movies. But, in World War II movies, we're always portrayed as such heroic types, right? But we have the internment camps here and everything, all that kind of shit like that. I'm not trying to be, like, anti-patriotic or anything like that, but, tell the truth. Tell the whole story. I'm sure it's been told in numerous movies. But would you recommend the Tombs of the Blind Dead franchise? I saw and liked actress Lone Fleming in A Candle for the Devil and wanted to watch more of her work. I'm only familiar with the first one. I've seen it a few times. I really like it. Need to watch the sequels. Been waiting for a nice Blu-ray set now here. But there's 4 official ones, of course, and I hear most of them are pretty good. I do hope you return in front or behind the camera someday. That's how I discovered you. Thanks to Scott Shermer. Till next week. Probably not. Probably not likely. I mean, there's movies that were shot that have never got released. Maybe those will come out. I don't see myself directing another movie in a very long time, if ever. And I don't see myself acting in very many movies because most of the people that I enjoyed making movies with that actually turned out solid product or good product, I either am not really in communication with anymore, or not that I just had a falling out, or they just don't make movies. Now we have Ilk Vomit 88. It's been a while since I've heard anything about Dustin Mills. Can you provide an update? Feel like you used to bring him up a lot in the past. He's still making movies. Does he have any projects going on? He has the Puppet Monster Massacre remake that he's working on, and that's a lot of work. He works kind of like making music videos for people and stuff, and animation and stuff like that. He doesn't really make feature-length movies anymore. I have not seen him in a while. Here and there we get back, we'll talk online or get together. We're not too far away, and I did plan on doing some work for him. That's voice work and other stuff like that. And I did shoot a short for him last year. He does stuff here and there, but a lot of stuff he's super busy, and a lot of it doesn't get released. He's a busy guy. So I know he's doing well for the most part, as well as anyone can in these weird times. Stephen Hive, your reviews are so honest, it brings back a lot of interest in so many movies that are worth watching. I appreciate it. Hope you're doing well. Quinn25, your reviews have rekindled my interest in Kung Fu movies. Fun movies. Thank you. Thank you. Kung Fu fun movies. There we go. And Way Up Dude gives me a thumbs up. I appreciate it. We're going to get into this update, and we're going to get out of here. All right, let's get into this update. It's fairly quick. First up, we have Sex Demon and Other Hauntings by Agfa, a take on The Exorcist in blood-bathing color. Sounds hot. I'm just kidding. The new... Oh, I thought it said a Rambo male theater. But no, yeah. Agfa is pretty wild. This looks pretty weird. Gonna check it out. Horror porn stuff, maybe. Then we have The Sadness on 4K from Shudder, from one of the Vinegar Syndrome partner labels. I adore this movie. This is a 4K. I already had an import. But there's no way I was passing on this one. This movie is amazing. This is one of my favorite movies that came out recently. In the last few years by Rob Yabaz. This is, of course, a Taiwan movie directed by a Canadian in Taiwan. This is an excellent kind of take on the zombie-style movie. I wouldn't call full-out zombie, but hell, for all intents and purposes, it's a fucking zombie movie. It's gory, it's brutal, but it also is well-made, well-directed. And it's not that point where it's like, hey, look how crazy we are. I mean, it has that kind of, but it's not really made just for that fact, There's so many movies that are like that, where it's just like, we're going to rape a baby, because, yeah. And, I'm so tired of that kind of extreme material that doesn't pertain to the actual plot of the film. But Sadness, love it. Then we have Supermarkt. This is from Subculture. Is that the label? Subculture, yeah. And, I heard about this movie before. I think it's kind of like a pretty crazy kind of crime action film. Heard good things. 4K here. Check that out. That's a good sub-label. They don't put out as much as a lot of the other ones, but the stuff they do put out is pretty quality. Then we have one from Canadian. This is the Canadian International Pictures. Roadkill. This one I've heard about for a long time. I just didn't name only, and I wanted to check it out for a long time. Yeah, I don't know too much about it. A rock and roll movie about a girl who learns to drive. Roadkill. Looks pretty crazy. Next up, Kamikazi 89, a film by Wolf Grimm. It looks like it has Reindeer Fassbinder in there, so... Died very young, very intense director. So this looks pretty good. Who put this out? This is Film Movement. So yeah, new sub-label from Vinegar Syndrome. And then last, but certainly not least, is me scuffing my bottom of my slipcover. I better throw it out, guys. It's no good anymore. We have David the Rock Nelson Collection Volume 1, and I've heard about him for years. I've never actually seen any of his movies, but he makes super low budget, bizarre, crazy-ass movies. This is a Saturn's Core. What is on here, guys? There's got to be a slew of them. Conrad Brooks vs. the Werewolf, Son of the Werewolf, Adventures of Janet vs. Nosferatu, and vs. the Monster. So what, we got 4 movies here. I don't even know what to expect. I think my friend Seb is a fan of David the Rock Nelson. But yeah, got to pick it up. Pick up all the Saturn's Core. Plus, I would have picked this up if it was different. So I'm interested in checking these out just to see. But yeah, we're out of here. All right, guys. Thank you very much for watching. And as always, have a good one.